Hi, my name is Steve Stedman, and I'm the founder of Uzility.com. Tonight, we're going to go through some details around how to use Uzility to manage your Agile workflow. Let's take a look at Uzility. If you go to Uzility.com, you'll see the screen that I'm showing here. From here, just go to the registration page, fill it out with your details. As soon as you complete it, hit the register button, and you will be logged in to the Uzility system. You'll also get an email to validate your password, but you don't need to do that right away. You can do that whenever you have a chance. So once you're logged in, you're in what's called the dashboard view here. And from the dashboard view, we have access to product backlog, to the team, to boards, to sprint information, and all of the main parts of the entire system. So let's take a quick look around. If we click on the welcome board, this is an example of a Agile board represented in the Uzility system. And we'll be going through in a minute what we can do with cards and how to use cards and how to manage the board. But for now, let's start by adding a couple of team members, because what good is an Agile system if you can't have your whole team using it? Back to the dashboard view, we click the Add Team Member link, and we'll set up the new team member. We'll set up Joe user, and his email is Joe. Then we will set up another team member, and this will be Alex. Add the team member, and now we can see our team is just 3 people. And now what I want to do is customize each team member a little bit. So we'll start by going in and editing Alex, and we'll set his avatar or profile picture so we can easily recognize him in the system. We'll save that. We'll go to Joe, we'll edit Joe. We'll set his profile picture or avatar as well. And then we'll take a look at mine, and we'll upload a picture for me. All right, now that we've set up our team, they've all defaulted to red, being the first color in the list. So let's go through and change the colors for each of the users so that they can be differentiated in the system. And we'll see how that affects things in a minute. So for now, we'll choose Alex, and we'll change his card color to be Uzility green. We'll edit Joe and set his card color to be orange, kind of an off orange color there. And we'll edit my card color to be sky blue. Now we can see we have 3 team members, 3 different card colors. Now, when I added each of these team members, they would have received an email with information to click through and log into the site, as well as their default username and password, getting them logged in and able to use the site. Okay, so now that we've built out our team, let's go back and take a look at what we can do with adding some cards into the system in Excel if you're not using an online system like Uzility. So if you can see the list that I'm showing here, we have a spreadsheet with a column for boards, and that may represent different projects. We've got a column that represents columns, and these are different statuses or different states that the work is in as it's going through the process. For instance, we can see getting started, there's 3 things that are complete, and that covers creating your account, adding team members, and team member pictures. We've completed those items. But we haven't completed importing cards, switching boards, or any of these other items on the list. This might be a pretty common way of working your backlog prior to trying something like Uzility. So let's take a look at how we take this and bring it into Uzility and represent it in the Uzility system. I'll switch my screen back over to the main Uzility dashboard. From here, under the product backlog section, there's a link called Import Stories to Your Backlog. When we click that, you can see that we go to the import page, and there's 4 different import types we have here today. We'll be adding more over time, but we've started with these 4. The first one is Excel. You can create a spreadsheet that has, well, the columns that we just looked at in the sample Excel spreadsheet, or you can use a CSV, which is very similar to Excel. We also support imports from Trello or Kanban tool. If you're able to pull an export file out of either of those, you can load it into Uzility. And in fact, even if you don't know how to get the export file out of those, you can click through on the import, and it will tell you the steps to go into that product and export your file so it can be loaded into Uzility. And if you don't have your backlog set up in the right format, you can download the Uzility sample spreadsheet. If it's already there, we can just choose the file to upload. Choose file, browse for that file on disk, and then we hit the upload file button. At this point, it'll scan through that entire Excel spreadsheet, and for every row, it will create, if the board doesn't exist, a board to represent it. And boards are just like, think of it as different cork boards that you might have cards stuck to. It'll create workflow or columns in there that represent the status of things, and it will create a card for each row in the system that has card data. So let's take a look here. We got 3 boards that were created. We'll take a look at the first imported board. And in there, we can see that there's 5 cards. And with those 5 cards, 3 of them are already in the complete column. One of them is creating your account. The other is adding team members and team member pictures. The importing cards, now that we've covered that one, we can just drag it over to the complete column and call it done as well. And next, we'll take a look at switching boards. We're going to use the Uzility interface here to manage the different training items that we're going to go through. Every time there's something we're going to cover in the system, we will have a card that moves to, for switching boards, the way you do that, at the top of the Uzility screen, there's a drop-down. And in there, there's a list of all the boards in the system, or all the boards that you have access to at least. By default, these boards that were imported go into the private boards category, meaning I'm the only one who can see them. And then there's shared boards with a default board, and anything in the shared board category is available for everyone on the team to see. So before we go any further, and we'll cover this part in more detail in a minute, I'm just going to go into the boards page and change the 3 imported boards so that they're not owner only, so they're actually shared with the entire team. And then when we switch back to the boards menu, we can see these new boards have been moved down into the shared boards category. So we'll click on the getting started board. And all you need to do to switch to different boards is just click that drop down and move over to the other board. Generally, you would use different boards to represent different teams or possibly different projects. But for now, we'll just move that over to the complete column. All right, so we've completed all the work on this board, and that's really the super basics of getting started with Uzility. Next, let's take a look at what we can do to work with cards. So in the to-do column, we have many items that are listed here. And the first one we're going to take a look at is dragging cards. Cards can be moved around the board by simply clicking on them and dragging them up or down to mark different locations or moving them into a different column. Generally, when we move a card into a different column, it indicates that something has changed in the status of that card. So for instance, taking it out of the to-do column and dropping it into the doing column indicates that I'm actively working on that card. You can move them up and down in the list. Generally, you can do whatever you want to rearrange the cards. For now, we'll drag that one over to the done column. And next, we'll take a look at assigning cards. If I'm just going to take a card and drag it into the doing column, there's no indication of who's working on it or who it's assigned to or anything like that. So there's a couple different ways that cards can be assigned to people. One of them is if you want to take the card and assign it to yourself, you can use the right-click menu by right-clicking on the card, choose assignment, and assign the card to me. And what that will do is it'll take that card, associate my name with it, and then anytime it's displayed in the system, it'll be displayed with my user color, and then it'll also show my name down here so you can see very quickly that that card is assigned to me. The other way you can assign cards, and we'll take a look at this card 11 over here, if you want to assign it to someone else, you can double-click on it to edit it. And once you're in the edit mode, there's an assign to drop-down list that you can drop down and assign it to a different user. So I'm going to assign this one to Joe. And at the time that gets assigned to Joe, Joe will get an email notifying him that there's a card in the system that's been recently assigned to him. Next, I'm going to take this editing cards card and bring it up here, put it second on the list. I'm going to edit that one, and I'm going to assign that one to Alex. You can see the different card colors. You can very quickly see that Joe is sort of this off yellow color, Alex is using the Uzility green, and I'm using the blue cards. Now, if you've made a mistake, like for instance, if I assign this card to me and you realize, oh, I didn't want to do that, you can right-click on it, choose assignment, and set it back to unassigned. And that will take away the color and take away who it's assigned to so that it's back to sort of the gray or unaccepted state. So at this point, I think that covers assigning cards, so we'll move that over to the done column. Next, we'll take a look at adding cards. That was assigned to Joe, but since I'm doing the training, I'll assign it over to me. To add cards, there's a couple different ways you can do it. One, which is sort of the obvious one we've already covered, is the import process. That's the way to get lots of cards into the system fast. If you just want to add a card into the current board, you can mouse over the column heading. You get this plus icon on the left side. Click the plus, you get a pop out. You can just type in the name of the card. And I'll type in a title that says show another way to add cards. And you can see card number 35 is there. So I will now assign that card to me. And you can add as many of them as you want that way simply by continuing to hit the plus button and just typing in the title of each card. But let's say you want to add a card to a different column or a different board. One of the ways you can do that is to go up to the top of the screen and look at the green plus card or add card button. When you hit that, you get a larger dialog that allows you to put in the card name and to put in more details. And the more details section, you can keep typing and type as much as you want here so that you can have a great deal of information behind that, all of the user story or whatever you need to describe the card. You can put it in any of the workflows. So I'm just going to put this one in the doing column, and I'm going to assign this one directly to Joe. Save the card, and it popped in right here, and that off yellow color is Joe's color there. You know, I don't really like that color very much for him. So I'm going to go back to the team page, edit Joe, change his color over to mango. That one stands out quite a bit better. So it's that easy to quickly change what the cards look like. All right, so next, moving through the system, we've shown another way to add cards. We've covered adding cards. Now let's take a look at editing cards. Let's see over here, is there anything else? Editing cards, working with checklists, and card icons. Those are the three things that I want to cover kind of all at once. So I'm going to assign all three of these cards to me. Now they're assigned to me, we'll take them on. So to edit a card, you can just double click it. It goes into edit mode. You can change the title if you want to. You can assign it to a sprint right here if you'd set up any sprints, which we haven't done yet. You can modify the details. You can add more info in here, whatever you need to put. You can change the board. You can change the status. You can change who it's assigned to. You can put in dependencies if one card depends on another, or you can set the priority. So let's set this one as priority 1 because that's the one we're working on, or that's the top priority we're working on right now. We'll save that. Go back in and edit it again. You can see the changes have been saved there. Now, one of the things we can do, let's say I've just assigned this card to someone else. I'll assign it to Joe, in a comment, and I'll put, Joe, just a note to him, can you help me with this card? And at that point, it's been assigned to him. I add a comment, save the comment. It shows who made the comment, when it was made, and that comment is a permanent record associated with the card, so you can keep a running commentary of things that are happening as you're working through the system. So that's for the first page of editing card details. So let's go back and take a look at that. And notice this card here that was assigned to Joe. It shows up with a little icon here that represents comments. You can click that icon and link directly through to the comment section. And let's see, as people add comments on cards, the person who created the card, the person it's assigned to, and anyone who has commented on that card will get an email notification letting them know that something has been changed or updated along the way with that card. So let's take a look here at the next section of checklists. Since a card represents a user story, oftentimes in Agile you have lots of different types of checklists. You may have one checklist that represents acceptance criteria. You might have another list that represents what needs to be done as developer tasks. Any number of different things like that. So we've built this system called checklist where we can just add in a checklist. We'll call the first one acceptance, which are the things that the product owner may specify that need to be done in order for this task to be complete. And they may be written in the verify something format, or they may use the given, when, then. So like given some status, when the user does something, then an action needs to be performed. And you can quickly add any number of items into the list here. Now, as you click through the list, you'll notice up top there's the green bar that shows what percentage of the way through completion it's at. And as you eventually get them all checked off, the whole bar goes to green. We can add a second checklist in here, for instance. You might add all the acceptance criteria up front when you're doing planning or when you're doing backlog grooming, but then when you go to a planning meeting where developers are throwing out all the items they have to do, we might have development tasks. And so we'll add a checklist for that. And we might have a create the database, create the Ajax call, create the form, and test it all. I don't know, any number of items there. And then the development task can get checked off independent of the acceptance criteria as they're going through. The next thing we have on the list associated with a card or a user story is the ability to attach files. So I'm going to choose a file to upload here. I'm going to go pick a screenshot that I had from a bug I worked on several months ago. Click Submit, and it attaches the screenshot right into the page there. You can attach pretty much any type of file you want. You can do Excel files, Words, PDFs, anything that helps you describe what's needed with this specific card. In here, we also have a history that shows who changed what and when, so that there's some audit trail to be able to look and see, well, what happened with this card as it went through the system. All right, so now when we go back to the board, you can see when the card is being shown, the three icons that show up represent comments, checklists, and attachments. Now there's another area on the card that represents point estimating that we haven't covered yet. So by default, point estimating is turned off. You just have to go into admin, choose points, and enable points to turn it on. If we go back to the board, edit the card, there's now a new tab up here called points where we can go in and give it a point estimate. And I'm just going to say that this is a point estimate of 8. We'll save that. Look at the board. This next one, let's take a look at, and I'm just going to give that one an estimate of 3. Again, you take the time to do normal point estimating with your team. And then this working with checklists, I'm going to give that one an estimate of 1 because we've pretty much done all the work there. So there's only about 1 point remaining. So now when we go back to the list here, we can see that the top card was estimated at 8 points, and the column total going down so far is at 8 points. Now we go to the next one, and it's estimated at 3. Let's see here, refresh that. So 3, and the column total at that point is 11 points. And then the last one is 1, and the column total is 12 points. So the column total is just the total of all the points from the top down. So if you know that you can take on 60 points, for instance, in a sprint, you just have to keep point estimating a column until you get to 60 points, and then you've got enough cards for that sprint. So I think that's complete on editing cards. We've covered the card icons, and we've also hit on working with checklists. Let's take a look at archiving and deleting cards, printing cards, and then after that, we'll take a look at searching for cards. Printing cards. This is one of those things that, first let me assign it to myself to indicate that I'm working on it. This is one of those things that when you're using an online product for managing your Agile processes, oftentimes you may need to be able to work in an offline mode. And it may be that you have a cork board that you want to put your cards up on in the office, or it may be that you're going to a sprint planning meeting and you don't have a network connection, or you don't have a computer available to you, and you want to just print out some cards that you can make notes on. There's a number of different ways styles we can print cards, but let's just take a look at the to-do column here. You mouse over it, you get a wrench at the top. You click the wrench, and we get an option that says print card to PDF. Choose that. We get an option to print 4x6 index cards, or full page on a regular sheet of paper, landscape with 4 cards per page, or a full page portrait list of cards. My favorite lately is the landscape with 4 cards per page, so we'll choose that. Choose print, and it's going to print all of the cards in that column into a PDF file. From here, we would just hit the PDF print button, and it would go to your printer. Once it's printed out, you just need a pair of scissors. You can go through and chop this up, and you've got card-sized, or all of your online cards have been converted into paper cards to use them for whatever purpose you need. Sprint planning, backlog grooming, whatever it may be. Now, let's say you're all done at the end of the sprint and you want to go in and do a sprint review. You might print out all the cards that have been completed, but print them out as a full page list of cards. When we print that out, you just get a list of what all the cards are. So that covers printing cards. Let's take a look now at archiving and deleting cards. One of the things that we come across is once we've got all these cards over here in the done column, we need a way to clear them out. Because without that, as the team keeps doing work and the done column is just going to get full and there's going to be nowhere to put the cards. So the way we can do that is we can either archive a single card by right-clicking on it and choose Archive Card. That takes it out of the column, takes it out of the board, takes it out of everything here. It indicates that it's completely gone from all the normal views, but we do have a way to go get it back from the archived list. The other way to get rid of the cards in a column is to click the wrench up top and choose Archive the entire column. This is generally what I would do at the end of a sprint, and it just clears out all the cards and gives you a fresh starting point to work on that done column. Now, once the cards have been deleted, we can go up here to this report section, choose the archive stories, and here we get a list of all the cards that have been archived. And if there's one of them we decided that maybe we need to bring it back, you just right-click on it, choose Unarchive, pops it into edit mode, you specify where you want it to go, and I'll put it in the done column, and you save it. There it is, and the card comes back to your board. Down at the bottom of the screen, you'll notice this search box. From here, you can start typing, and as you type, your search results will be shown on the current board. So if we type board, what happens is all the cards that don't match the search criteria get dimmed or grayed out, and the ones that do match are still shown fully highlighted there. You'll notice on the screen here that there are 3 cards shown that match your results, but down at the bottom it shows that there's 4 cards found. All right, so this is a good time for a sidetrack. You notice that at this point, I assigned a card earlier to Joe, and it popped up on my screen with a little notice here saying, yes, how can I help you? So Joe's in the system, he's working on that card, he got the email notification, and he came through and said, how can I help? So I'm going to click on card 13, jump over to that, and say, I don't know, let's pretend it's a bug, and I could say, please fix this bug as soon as possible. At that point, he's going to be off working on trying to get that bug fixed. We'll jump back to the board, and when I type that comment, a small black screen would have popped up in the corner of his screen indicating that change. We'll go back to the search criteria here. We can type in different things like cards. You see at this point there's 2 cards shown on the screen, but it says 4 cards found. If we click on that 4 cards found link, it takes us to our advanced search page, and it shows us that of the 4 cards that were found that had the term cards in them, 2 of them were on the current board and 2 of them were on other boards. You could click right through to that other board, or we could notice the pop-up from Joe down at the bottom saying, comment, I'm on it. So I know at this point that this other card number 13 that was assigned to Joe, is actively being worked on, and it's going to be taken care of by him. If I just click the comment, it goes away. And we'll come back to notifications in just a minute, but right now we'll finish up with a search. So let's say we wanted to go back to this importing cards. We could just click through, and we're then in edit mode on that card. So I think at that point, with a little bit of sidetrack there on notifications, we've covered searching and we've covered the advanced search page. Joe, on the other end, will be getting notifications like I'm seeing right now. He just dragged a couple cards around, and I get notification on my screen that he changed that into the workflow was changed to doing, or that's the in progress category. And then being the superstar that he is, he already moved it over to done that quick. And he was able to get that card taken care of in no time. Why don't we hit on another thing here? We'll just dismiss those 2 messages. And then we'll also talk about the activity report. So if you click up top on activity, let's say you've been away for a day and you want to take a look at what's recently changed by other people in the system, you can click on the activity report, and it pops up a running history here of things that other users did in the system recently. Now, if there's an action that happens right now while we're watching the screen, you'll see it pop in immediately, and it will pop in with a bold format down at the bottom showing that that's a new action. And what you run into is with several people using the system, you get a lot of notifications coming across here, so you can really know what's going on as you're using Uzility. An example of this was there was a bug that came up a couple weeks ago, and I clicked on the activity feed and I noticed that a new bug had been entered. Rather than, I just clicked through and I read it first, and then I got a notice popping up on my screen that the developer had actually taken the card and he was already working on it. And then a moment later, I got notice that the card was done. We did a little bit of testing on it, and we got it deployed out to the live system pretty quick. And the entire life of that card, with 2 of us actively working on it, was about 15 minutes total, maybe 10 to 15 minutes. In that time, we didn't actually talk in person. We probably could have if we wanted to. We didn't exchange email. All of our communication was done through this activity monitor in the Uzility system. So it was really handy to have that in there. We're able to know what's going on. All right, so back to working with cards. So the next thing I want to take a look at is Oh, look at that. Another card popped out. Alex user. So I probably should have mentioned when I set up the 2 test users at the beginning, Joe and Alex are 2 of the team members that work with me on Uzility, and they've logged in and they're playing around with it, giving these notices. So you can see that Alex edited a card called Notifications. We can click on it and see, and if we want to look at what he changed, we can click through the history, and it just shows that he edited the story. Back to the cards. We'll just let the notifications fly by for now. So this next one, setting the board background. This is one of my favorites, I think, in the entire Uzility system. I know all of us that have a Windows or a Mac desktop or whatever, you like to be able to set your own background image on your desktop. Well, we've allowed you to do the same thing inside of Uzility. And right now, if you look at this board, there's a lot of white background here. And if we switch to another board, there's more white background. And we switch to another board, we'll go back to the original one, it's still a lot of white background, and it's kind of hard to differentiate between the different boards. If I want to make them differentiate between the different boards, I basically anywhere in the background, choose background and set the board background. That will then prompt me to upload an image file. Now what I did is I went out to Google and I just did some searching for really cool backgrounds. I found some pictures that I wanted to be able to use as background images. So I set the board background on this board to be this beach picture. Now let's say we switch over to a different board. So once we've set the background, that background only applies to a single board. Now we've go over to this other board, we can set the background, choose a file, upload, and we can get a different color background. So you can see at this point when you're switching between the different boards, you get a real quick impression or real quick reminder of what board you're on. Now let's say you upload a background image and you decide, I'm tired of that one, I don't want it anymore. Well, you can just right click, choose backgrounds, and choose clear background, and it'll set it back to the white default background. I'm not going to do that now because I kind of like this one, and we'll leave it there. Let's take a look at filters next. So what filters are, and we'll just assign this card to me, filters are a way to limit what you're viewing on a current board. Now imagine you might have a board here with 10 different columns, and it might have a few hundred cards on it. If that's the case, it might be a little bit hard to manage. So you can go in and up at the top of this white bar at the top of the screen here, you can choose Add Filter, go in, and I'm going to give it a name, and I'm just going to give this name My Active Cards. And I'm going to skip the Done column, but I'm going to choose the To Do and the Doing column, any cards that are assigned to me. I'll then save it, go back to the board, and the board is now filtered down to just one card, and that's the only card in the To Do and Doing columns that's assigned to me. If we remove filters, you can see that that's the only blue one. Now let's go over here, and I'm just going to assign the next 3 cards to me and go back to the My Active Cards filter, and it gets rid of that extra column, so I can only see at this point the columns that I'm interested in. Now you can go through and set up as many filters as you want up here. You can right click and choose Edit Filter or Remove Filter or go into different settings. But if you wanted to add a second filter, like let's say I was interested in, let's see, To Do, Doing, and Done, and we'll go to Joe, and I'm just going to name this one Joe, save it as a new filter, go back to the board. Now I can click and see, okay, those are all the cards that are assigned to Joe, and here's all the cards that are assigned to me. So I could quickly click around and see who's doing what and get a better idea of what's going on in the system there. And then you have the Remove Filter link, which just takes it away and goes back to the original view there. Okay, so next we're going to take a look at a couple things. First, it's going to be working with boards, and then some information around private boards or shared boards. We already took a look at how to change boards. We can click up to the drop-down menu and click over to the welcome board, and that's a private board that only I can see. Each user gets their own welcome board when they sign in, so they have a board to learn from. Or I can go switch to one of these shared boards that everybody on the team can see. But there's also the option here to choose Add Board. So I'm going to add a new board. I'm going to give this one a name, and I'm going to call it Personal Improvement. And I'm going to make it a private board that only I can see. And throughout the years, I come across things that I need to learn or I want to do to personally improve myself. I can go here and I can add things, and I can add whatever cards I want to this board. It's totally private because it shows up under the private board section here, and nobody else on your team or no one else using the system will be able to see your own personal boards. Now, let's say I'm starting on a new project and I want to add a board, and I'm going to make this board Project X, whatever the new project may be. And this is going to be a team-wide project. So I'll drop this down, change it to account-wide, hit add, and I get a new project board. And then from here, I can build out the backlog around that new project and not clutter up one of those existing boards. One of the common practices that I've seen that people will do when they're in the planning phase is they may set a board as being private, and then when they're ready to go and share it with others at the sprint planning time or backlog grooming, they then change that board so it becomes a shared board. And the way you can do that is to click up here on your name in the corner, go to the Boards menu, and from the Boards menu, as a normal user, you can see all of your boards, whether they're shared or private. And as a system administrator, you can see all of your private boards as well as all of the public boards on the system. So system administrators have the ability to come here and make changes to any of the, not public, but any of the shared boards amongst the whole team. So if we want to go and change this, let's see, my personal improvement, I might need some help in this area. So I'm going to change the personal improvement to be account-wide because I'm going to ask everyone to help me with my personal improvement, for instance. I'll save that, and then the personal improvement board gets moved. And we'll just set that one back to owner only because I don't really need that much help, I hope. And we can see that it goes back to the private board section. So from here, you can add new boards, you can delete boards. So let's take a look at how we delete a board. The Getting Started board, that's the one we went through with about 6 cards in the very beginning. It was one of them we imported, and I've decided that, well, I don't want that one anymore because we're done with that. So I'm going to hit the delete button here, and it gives me an error message. Oh, let me do that one more time so I can read the message. It says, cannot remove this Kanban board because the board contains cards. Okay, well, it's not going to let you delete a board when it has active cards on it. So all we need to do is go back to that Getting Started board. We can see they're all in the complete column. We can click the wrench, choose Archive Entire Column. All of those cards at this point get archived and removed from this board. We can then go back to the Boards page and choose Delete the Getting Started board, and at this point it's been removed. So it's just a safety thing. It won't let you remove boards that have cards active on them. All right, so I think that covers private boards versus shared boards. And then managing backlogs. All right, we'll get to that in just a second, but let's jump over to this other training section. Creating sprints and assigning cards to sprints, because that ties into the card from the other board that was about managing backlogs. Sprints in Agile are a time-boxed period of work where you commit to doing a certain number of points or certain number of cards. I know I threw those into the done column, but we'll work through those right now. So the way you set up sprints is you click on this little sprint icon up at the top of the Uzility screen. And here you have a choice to be able to view past, current, or future sprints. And because this is a brand new account I just set up, we don't have any sprints at all, past, current, or future configured. So we can go to the Manage Sprints page. Here I'm going to set up a new sprint. We're going to call this Sprint 1. And we'll just pretend that that sprint started on Monday, 2 days ago. And it started at 8 a.m. and the duration is 7 days. So it's a week-long sprint. So that's a sprint that would currently be a current active sprint right now because today's date is between November 17th and 7 days past November 17th. Then we'll set up Sprint 2, which will start the week after. We'll go in and set it to the 24th at 8 a.m. So when Sprint 1 ends, Sprint 2 will be beginning. And we will give that one also 7 days. So here now when we click at Future, we see Sprint 2 is listed in the Future Sprint section. Sprint 1 is listed in the Current Sprint section, and still we have no past sprints because there's none that have been completed at this point. How do we get cards into a sprint? Well, let's go back to our board. One way to do it is to double-click on a card to edit it, click the Sprint drop-down, and assign it to a sprint right here, and then hit Save. Another way to do it is to right-click on the card and choose Add to Sprint, where you get prompted with a list of the sprints. And I'm going to add this card to the existing sprint and the second card to the existing sprint. Now we've covered 2 ways to add cards to sprints. One is to edit the card, the other is to right-click and assign it to a sprint. The next way to do it is through our backlog. So the backlog is a list of all of the cards that haven't yet been completed and haven't yet been assigned to a sprint. And across the top, it will show several of upcoming sprints. We only have one upcoming sprint that hasn't been started. And you can look down at the bottom here and choose what things you want to add into a sprint. So we'll drag this one and just drag it and drop it in sprint 2. And let's just throw all 4 of these cards into sprint 2. Once it's there, we can go over to the sprints page that we looked at earlier and see that sprint 1 had 2 cards in it. That's the sprint that's currently going on. Sprint 2 has 4 cards in it. And let's take a look. With sprint 1, we've got this ability to run the daily scrum. Now, none of these cards have been completed, but it does show you what's updated. And this gives you the ability to click through and see for a given sprint what has changed recently. When you're doing your daily stand-up, you've got a quick prompt here to be able to see who did what and when. And then you've got the ability to drill down by specific users to see who changed what and when. It makes running your daily scrum or daily stand-up meeting really darn easy. Let's take a look at another area related to sprints. And if we just double click on a sprint, and again, we just created the sprint, nothing's happened with it yet, but over time, this burn down chart would be updated on an hourly basis and show you how the points are changing throughout the day. So at the beginning, burn down chart would show all of the points that are left to complete. And then over the 7-day duration of that sprint, hopefully as work is getting done, you will see the point values drop here. There's just a tree map, which is kind of visual representation of the sprint. And this is a little bit more effective when you have more cards in the sprint. And then the bubble chart. What I like about the bubble chart here is it shows the different cards, and the size of the bubble is based off of the point estimate. So this one here was an 8-point card, and this one here was a 5-point card. So the 8-point card shows up as being larger than the 5-point card. And even if you have 30 or 40 cards here, it will show a bubble for each card and the relative point size. So you can quickly look and see where the really big point estimated cards are, as well as the small point estimated cards. All right, so let's go back to other training, and I think that pretty much covers it for the creating and assigning cards to sprint section. We already talked about notifications earlier. That's the one that we showed with the different pop-ups coming in from other people. The activity monitor, that was up here, and it shows who did what when, and we can see that Joe and Alex have been making changes here. Email notifications. So a little mention of email notifications here. There's a couple different areas where you get notified, and you can go into settings and change this as well. But when you have created a card, or when a card is assigned to you and somebody comments on it, you will get an email notifying of that comment. So if I put a comment down here, hit comment, an email is then sent out to the person who created the card. Now the exception is if I created the card and I placed the comment, then I don't get email notification because I assume that I already know it. If there's multiple people, like 4 or 5 different people or however many that have put comments in this card, all new comments go to everyone who has previously commented on that same card, as well as whoever it's assigned to. And that way, people can stay in the loop and know what's going on when things are changing on a specific card. So next, let's take a look at managing workflow and WIP limits. Those two tie together. So right now, this board that we set up here is kind of boring on the workflow, in that it only has 2 columns. It has the queue and it has done. There's no way of really indicating that anything's in progress. So the way we work with that is called workflows. You go up here to the menu with your name on it, click the workflows menu. Here you can see for our current board, queue and done are our only 2 columns or workflows. And keep in mind, each board can have a different set of workflows associated with them. So I'll give it a new status. I can go in here and add a new status, and let's just call this one in progress. We'll save it. We'll move it up 1 slot. So we go queue, in progress, and done. And then let's add another one that's called documentation. And we're just going to pretend at this point that for every task we do, once it's been developed, it has to be documented somewhere. Maybe the documentation is going to a blog. Maybe it's going to some specification somewhere. Anyway, but some way of documenting. Maybe it's writing help. And so then there's this burn down status. And this is important for the burn down charts, because when we change this to status complete, what that means is that anything that gets moved into that column will then be marked as completed in regard to how the burn down charts are changed. Okay, the WIP limits, we'll come back to that in a minute. And then we've got the options to move the different statuses around here or to delete them with the trash can over on the side. So let's go back to our board, And we can now see that there's 4 columns we've got here. And managing workflows and WIP limits are currently in progress. You have the ability to go in and set up whatever workflow you need to manage your own process. So if you have the simple Agile textbook example of to do, doing, and done, 3 columns, you're good. That's all you need. But if you have a more complex process where you have from development to maybe code review to deploy the code to and whatever series of steps you have to go through, you can represent all those steps across the top and take a look at the workflows again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new column, and I'm going to call this one test. And let's just pretend that we have a team of 5 developers and 1 tester. And what happens in that environment is that the developers are working like crazy. They start loading up the queue, and the tester has got a lot of work to do to keep up with all those developers. Then the tester goes on vacation for a week, or they get the flu and they're out for a week or whatever. And when they come back, there's like 50 cards that they have to work on. Now, that's not a lot of fun, and it seems pointless to keep throwing things into that column if they're just going to get backlogged. So the way we can deal with that is we can go in and set a work in progress limit or WIP limit. We can say that the WIP limit on this column, and it might, 3 is a bit low, but I'm just going to set it to 3 for our example here. And what that means is that that column can only ever hold 3 cards. No matter what you want to do, you're not going to put more than 3 cards in there. We come back here, and I'm just going to throw a couple of these other ones, throw 2 of these other ones over to the test column, pretending they need to be tested. We'll drag this one in, and that's all the load that this tester can handle in this example. What happens when we try and throw another card in? We throw this, and we get a red notice down at the bottom that says column over WIP limit, can't drop that card here. So what that means is, as a developer, if I'm working on this in progress card, I can't give it to the tester because the tester is completely overloaded at this point. This may trigger a number of other actions in your organization. It might mean that as a developer that I need to jump in and help that tester test something else. It might mean that I have to talk to a manager to get another tester assigned from another team, or it may mean that as a developer, I just go and work on another project. It really depends on the entire environment there. But as soon as I move something out of that test column, I can move another item in based off that work in progress limit. So we'll just move these all over to the done column now. Now, one of the things you'll notice, and I'm just going to click on the activity monitor here as an example so we can see everything that Joe and Alex have been doing. All of the times are shown based off of my local time zone, which happens to be the West Coast of the United States. And I know Alex and Joe are in the same time zone. But what happens if you've got team members that are in other time zones, or if your whole team is not on the West Coast of the United States? It might be in London, let's say. The way that we can deal with that is by setting the time zone for a specific user. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my name menu up here, drill down on profile, and in profile we can go through a number of different settings. But the one I want to look at here is time zone. Let's jump back real quick just to take a mental note of this. So you'll notice all of these changes by Joe and Alex here were at around 7:20 to 7:50 p.m. Let's go back to the profile page. I'm going to make this change and say, no, I'm not really on the West Coast of the United States. I'm in London. Now when I save it, if I go back and look at the activity monitor, it now shows that those changes were made not at 7:26 p.m., but they're made at 3:26 a.m. because they're showing it based off of my local time now being in London. If we go in and look at a card and drill down in this notifications card here, for instance, and look at the history, all of the times here are now shown off of my local time zone. So whether your entire team is in one time zone or whether you have a team distributed out over multiple time zones or many time zones, we can show the correct time to every user using the system based off of their current location. All right, next we'll hit on settings here, and that's just under profile. We go in and there's a handful of settings here. You can enter your phone number, just set your first name and last name, change your email, change your color. If I wanted to change it to something like fresh eggplant, which looks kind of purpley to me, I'll save that. You can go in and change your password, change your notifications, or change different view settings here as well. That covers settings. And the last item that I have scheduled for the training today is where do we find more information? Lots of different places to find more information in the system. First one, we just go to the info option up here and go to the blog. From the Uzility blog, we are generally pushing out a constant stream of information every few days. Details on upcoming trainings, how to do specific tasks. Like here's an article that talks all about how you import cards from Trello into your Uzility account. Click on that and it goes through all the steps on how to accomplish that specific task. So the blog is a really great source of information. Help page. Where did that go? The help page, which is a new page that we've added into the system with links to some of the commonly asked questions. Now, Uzility 101 video training. When we're done with this session, we'll make sure that this session gets included in that video training page. We can click through to the support link or go through to importing from Trello. Now, with this page being new, over time we're going to grow it out and probably end up having about 20 of the most common help links being shown on this page. But for now, we've just got these 3 to start with. So let's take a look at another source of information. If you can't find what you need there, you can also go out to our YouTube channel and take a look at some additional training videos, or you can click right through to the support page. There's a handful where you can send email to us at Uzility with specific questions or specific requests, and you can get a hold of us that way, and we're very responsive to those questions. So for now, if you want to get started with Uzility, just go to uzility.com or go to the registration page and get started from there.